Okay, so here I'm just tacking on these pieces. So I have the square here, and you can see that there's a little bit of a, maybe you can't see it in the camera, there's a little bit of a bow in this metal. It bows out just a little bit. I'm going to not be able to correct that. So, but what it will do is give me just a tiny bit extra space, just by like a 1/16 there, for my cylinder that'll go right in here. Okay, so I'm going to tack this one in. I'm going to tack this one in. I'm going to weld a little piece across here. I'm just going to tack a little piece across to support the two between, so that they don't warp one way or the other, and then I'll go ahead and burn them in on both sides. Okay, so basically I've just lined these two plates up with this edge, and they're both straight up and down. Well, this one leans out a little bit, but this one's pretty much straight up and down. The pins just slide right in and slide right out. This is where the precision of the mag drill is really paying off. Not that you couldn't do this with a drill press, of course. People do it all the time with drill presses, but this is making up for my otherwise poor engineering skills. So a little bit I'm stopping here. It's probably a lot of glare, isn't it? Just to make sure that nothing's changed. So a little bit on this side, and then check and just make sure nothing's changed and nothing's leaning too hard. This is making a big difference right here. This piece that I tacked across here. Okay, so there's what it looks like. So I'm just tacking all this in. I don't know how this is all going to work together, or if it's even going to work together, but that way it's not all burned in. I won't have a bunch of welds to cut off if I don't have to. So these 10-inch pieces have a little bit of a bow. This one bows a little bit this way, this one bows a little bit this way. So I'm trying to use the concave side to check my level, okay? And I've also, it's pretty good, I've also measured from side to side there and side to side there to make sure this is centered in the bucket itself. I'm not really measuring between here and here because I don't think that's significant. What will be more significant is that this lines up perfectly with my brackets that hold the top of the cylinder when I put this piece across right here. Okay. Good. So I'm just tacking this in again. What might happen is when I go to test it on the tractor, if I'm not careful with the cylinder, I'll bust these welds off. And I know that, but that's a possibility. But I think that's better than burning it all in and then trying to cut it off if I have to make an adjustment later. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to cut 1.25 inches here, and the problem is when you go to cinch it down in the vise just turns and wants to push it out, right? So that's where this little modification comes in with this right here. Be able to trap small pieces. And still tighten it down. Now I can tighten it down. This is still wobbling around, isn't it? Let's get it all the way in the bottom there. There we go. That'll do. Good. Okay. So that's kind of a start of how it's going to look. These I cut down to 1.25 inches because I had 2.5 inches, so one will fit there, one will fit there. I may shave these down a little bit on the belt sander because I want some wobble. I want this to be able to wobble some like this shaft. it's not going to move very much because there shouldn't be much side play in the bucket, but there's going to be play in the lower control arms. There's going to be a little bit of play here between this piece and this piece, and then the bucket may flex some, so I need some flexibility here. And there's a tiny bit of play in these bushings too, so that'll help as well. There's a tiny bit of play between this and that bushing, so that'll help as well. And as you can see, it already tilts side to side up here. So I think as far as its range of motion goes, I'm pretty good. Okay, so what I did was I held this across here. I'm not going to be able to do this with one hand and hold the camera. Flipped these pieces up to where they contact at the bottom of that. Held that in place. Held this piece in place across here. Leveled it. I also made sure that the angle here, the levelness here, matched the levelness of the top, but also I measured up from here to here to get the same measurement, and I also measured from the bottom of this pin all the way up to here to get the same measurement, and I did the same thing on this just to try to get several things to match. Okay, and then what I'll do is I'm cutting this right now, this piece right now of this leg that's over on the bandsaw right now, and I'll cut this one. Then what I'll do is I'll set this up here across, tack it in place, then I'll swivel these up, contact the bottom, make sure I'm in the middle of this play here, so not there and not there, but somewhere right in there. It'll be easier when there's a piece up here that I can tack these pieces to, then tack them up there, give myself a little bit of space out here like this, and or maybe just like a 1/4 inch or 3/16 maybe, not much. And then I'll tack those in place, and then we'll make sure that everything lines up and seems to have, I don't want this binding, okay? I don't want it binding down here or binding up here, so I want a little bit of play up here and a little bit of play down here. There shouldn't be much side to side motion. There's going to be some. So the other thing I wished I had done differently is, because I got a new mag drill and I was so excited about drilling holes, I drilled all 3/4 inch holes here thinking I was going to use Cat 1 pins on everything, not realizing that I hadn't bought my cylinder yet. I ended up with this Category 2 cylinder, so I'm having to fabricate a bunch of bushings to keep it centered, and it's kind of a pain in the butt. I'm going to have to do the same thing here. I'm going to have to get a couple of these Cat 1 to 2 bushings, split it, because this is just way too wide. You can see that this bushing, Cat 1 to 2 bushing, I'm going to push it right to the edge there. Okay, so it's right on the edge here, and you can't even see it there, so it barely goes in this side. So I'm going to have 2 here. I'll probably split them down the middle, so the actual cut, so I'll put 1 here and 1 here. I'll have the cut right down the middle. I mean the separation between 2 right down the middle. I didn't think of that, and had I bought my cylinder, had all that already picked out, I would have drilled these 1-inch holes and used Category 2 pins. Anyhow, so frustrating, but I'm trying to make up for it. Okay, so it'll be a little hard to see this mark, but maybe in the camera I can push it that way and push it that way, but it just kind of rests right in the middle of those two, which I'm happy with right there. It means it shouldn't jam one way or the other. So that looks pretty good. That pin comes out pretty easily. This pin moves around pretty easily. I don't know if that's going to be a problem or not. I may have to put a couple little spacers on the sides here. I can cut those easily though, kind of like I did down there. I would like a little bit of wiggle room in case there is some flex in the frame or whatever. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm no engineer, obviously. Okay, good. Got these burned in. Got these mostly burned in. I still have the sides to do, but I think that'll be enough to hold it and tilt the tractor bucket and lift it. If not, it'll break. We'll know here shortly. All right, so one of my worries was that I wouldn't be able to, if I scooped up some dirt, I wouldn't be able to tilt it up high enough to keep all the dirt in. As I'm driving down the road, bouncing down my trail, that it would bounce out if the bucket was flat. So this is with the 3-point all the way up, and with the bucket almost tilted all the way up. You can see there's a little gap here. So I'm going to see how that wears. I may end up putting a couple pieces there just so they don't bend. It seems to dump far enough that I'll be able to dump all the dirt out of it. That was the other thing. I wasn't sure about the articulation. Would I be able to get it to go up high enough to hold the dirt and then go over far enough to dump all the dirt out? Okay, but it seems to be working like that. Okay, I just want to talk for a minute about a mistake I made. So I've been getting everything burned in, all the edges, all around these, all around those. I got these gussets put in right here, and here. So I had taken this off, this frame. I'd pulled those pins, laid it on the ground, and I'd burned all those in. And I burned one side of this in on the inside here, and right as I finished burning the other side in, I was like, oh no. And sure enough, the legs went like this. So I couldn't even get these back inside here. So I had to use my, I didn't know what else to use for a spreader, so I just used this top link and set it in here and then opened it and spread them out so that I have a little bit of a gap on both sides, there and there. And that's going to hold it in place. But now I've got to decide. So now I've got to decide about my bracing here. So I should have put bracing here and here and here and here between there before I burned this in, this side. Sure, burn this in, fine. The legs will warp, might go like this a little bit or like that a little bit. But that is hard. When the legs bend in like that, that's hard to deal with. So obviously metal goes in hot, it heats all this metal in here, and then as it shrinks and cools, it compresses. Instead of staying at a 90, it goes like that as it cools right here, right? So it shrinks there. And so, yeah, I should have put my bracing in first before I did that. Dumb mistake. Okay, well that didn't work either. So I tacked all these in, still in the middle. I took this out and they all compressed to the inside, and it like literally jammed it. It was so tight. So what I've done is I've squeezed this as hard as I can to push these out against this outer one to leave the biggest gap here and here, and it smashed against this one out here. And now I'm going to tack them in, and then I'll release it and see what happens again. Hopefully that solves it. If not, maybe I need a longer brace that goes further down. All right, I'm going to get it together. I've got almost everything burned in. I found a couple spots that I missed, but we're going to get those burned in later. I think it'll be okay. We're going to go do a test run, but I wanted to comment on this application that I did, this phosphoric acid. This is OSPHO brand, and it's basically phosphoric acid. This company, OSPHO brand, is actually phosphoric acid and then some other additives that they put into it. I'm not sure what they are, but basically it's a one treatment that you put on bare steel to not just neutralize rust, any surface rust that's on there is totally neutralized. It'll also treat the metal. It'll also somehow affects the top of the metal. It changes, chemically changes the surface of the metal so that it can't rust. And I've used this stuff. I first bought it when I was probably 20, let's see, 25, 35, 45. So 25, 30 years ago, probably 30 years ago, that I first used it, and I was building a winch bumper / mount for my Dodge truck, my 91 Dodge truck, and I coated it in this stuff and then just painted it directly because it acts like a primer as well. And for years, for 10 years after that, paint would chip off and flake off, and you'd see bare metal under it that looked just like this, kind of this, it changes it to this dark look, and it never ever rusted, like never ever rusted. If you really gouge it, like you bang it with something and it indents the metal, then it'll probably rust in that spot. But this stuff is amazing. I put it on everything that I put outside. Any steel project that I put outside, I don't just paint it. I put this on it, I let it dry for 24 hours, and then I paint it. and the paint sticks to it. It acts like primer, and it's just fantastic. Perfect example is this tractor barn, the steel frame. It was bare steel. It was I-beam steel that sat out here in the driveway in the rain and everything. It was all surface rusted, not terribly, but if you watch those videos, it did have some surface rust on it. Sprayed the phosphoric acid on, neutralizes the rust. It changes the chemical composition of the rust that's on the surface so that it won't ever spread. And you can see, well, maybe you don't remember, but I had little rust places all over this, and all I did was spray this with phosphoric acid in a spray bottle yesterday, and then I let it sit. It was kind of puddling in here, so I had wiped it out with the rag. That's why it's all streaky looking. You can apply it with a brush. You can apply it just with a rag. And, of course, you don't want to breathe it or get it on your skin. But look at the steel here where I welded it in. So this is all protected from rust. Now, this sat inside overnight. The mistake I made was with this piece right here, I coated it, and then I left it outside to kind of dry in this afternoon sun. Maybe the wind, I thought maybe it'll dry a little faster. Well, I forgot to bring it in last night. It didn't rain, but what it did do is it dewed heavily here. And usually doesn't do that in Colorado here, or our part of Colorado, but the car was covered in moisture this morning. Everything that was metal was cold and covered in a layer of moisture. I mean, it's just, the dew was really heavy. And so this got it too. And so it built up the surface of just kind of white powder. And that's typically what happens if it does get wet before it completely dries. I'm still not too worried about it. You can still look at it and see there's absolutely no rust on this thing at all. And it was soaking wet this morning. It was covered in moisture. So even though the phosphoric acid didn't get to dry completely, it dried enough that it did its job. And so all the moisture since dried off, and there's absolutely no rust on it at all. So even though I messed up, it already did its job. I did apply the bucket. I did have it sitting right here at an angle. You can see the outline of it when I sprayed it. It got on the floor, and it doesn't really etch the concrete, like penetrate it, but it will discolor it for a little while. I've done several projects right here on this side of the driveway, including all that tractor barn steel where I sprayed it, and this was almost white with phosphoric acid overspray. And you can see that was a couple years ago. It's all gone now. And I really don't care much what the concrete looks like because I know I'm driving it out. I'm going to wear it out anyway. Outside, the rain will wash it off, and it'll eventually go back to normal. So you can protect the ground with cardboard or whatever. I didn't this time. And it would probably look better had I done that. So, all right, well, let's get this thing mounted up. And then we're going to go do a test on a little pile of dirt that I have over by the pond. So you can see one spot right here where I forgot to burn this part in right here and right here. I do have it welded in on the other side, so hopefully that won't give me an issue. And then I want to weld in some caps right here to close these ends. I'm probably going to leave the bottom ends open just because if any moisture does get inside, then, well, I can't really weld the cap on there right now anyway. I kind of shot myself in the foot, so I'd like to weld that part closed, but I can't now. Okay, let's get it together and get it done.